there, and thank you for joining us today at Enkyra Publications. Please visit our website at enkyrapublications.com. We offer materials and tools for people to fight and gain victory over pornography addictions, materials for wives of sex addicts, and anti-trafficking information. Today we're going to be speaking about should Christians watch Game of Thrones and similar programs, an in-depth investigation. Decisions. We are the primary decision makers regarding what we put before our eyes. The media presents itself to us, trying to engage us in accepting particular ways of thinking. We may not even consciously think about it, but a number of agendas are laced through a majority of the content we are handed, especially with what is considered the most popular widespread entertainment. But it's important to pause and consider what we put before our eyes because they are the windows of the soul. So we need to be diligent to protect them. Matthew 6:22 through 24 reminds, "The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness?" With every TV program, movie, website, etc., we should ask ourselves questions like, does this program honor and lift up Christ? Does it model positive ways to love others and to love Christ? Does it encourage a walk in holiness? And would it be a good show to watch with mom or even Jesus? When we engage, watch, and put aside time for movies and entertainment, we partner with them, making quiet yet very powerful statements to those around us, to God, our family and friends. And what we're saying really is, I agree with and enjoy this content. I essentially put my stamp and seal of approval on it. I am making this show a priority because it has worth and value to me. Game of Thrones is one popular show that has become a worldwide favorite, even amongst many Christians. So let's discuss it a bit. Some of the highlights that we see, some of the events that we see in the show are women are stripped, beaten, raped, violently murdered, abused with scepters. A pregnant woman is brutally murdered. The baby in her belly is stabbed. People are shot and eaten alive by dogs. Theon is tortured and castrated. Individuals are subject to sexual torture and mutilation. 2 twins have sex over the dead corpse of their son. A woman has excrement thrown at her, is degraded and humiliated. Sir Meryn beats and rapes underage girls. There's much more to say, but I think this is enough to give us an idea of what's going on. Does Game of Thrones show love for God and others? I would argue it showcases much the opposite. The foundational components of the series include cheating, stealing, manipulating, raping, murdering, pillaging, plundering. The greatest commandment is the foundation of the Christian life, to love God and people, and I would argue that the content in Game of Thrones involves really the exact opposite. Engaging in this program is turning one's back on the fundamentals of Christianity and partnering with its opposite. Even porn actresses are sought for many of the roles. There are multiple individuals in Game of Thrones who are or were porn stars, which is honestly no surprise because Game of Thrones is violent pornography, including endless types of sexual molestation and abuses. And the Bible exhorts and commands. In Hebrews 13:4, marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. James 1:27, pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. 1 Thessalonians 4:3-5. For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you should abstain from sexual immorality, that each of you should know how to possess his own vessel in sanctification and honor, not in passion of lust like the Gentiles who do not know God. These scriptures are important to measure against the show. Where is Jesus and Christianity in Game of Thrones? Because it's supposed to be a realistic account of the past. But because Jesus, Christianity, and the Holy Bible have been famous forever, an accurate, positive historical account is completely excluded from this series. Instead, very devious, gruesome, occultic, and pagan religions are expressed in the most offensive, descriptive of ways in Game of Thrones. There are many gods in Game of Thrones. I just want to go over a few because they're too numerous to count and mention. They are all anti-Christian, anti-Jesus, and anti-human in nature. And these gods require worship and have many elements of unholy sexual perversion, occultic rituals, blood sacrifices, baptism, resurrections. And some gods in Game of Thrones have similar names to the God of the Bible, like Lion of Night instead of the Lion of Judah, the Great Shepherd instead of the Good Shepherd. And one god is even modeled after the Trinity. All of these gods are blasphemous. It's a complete mockery of Jesus and the Holy Bible. I'm probably pronouncing this name wrong, but it's R'hllor, Lord of Light, and the Lightbringer. They are all in the Game of Thrones. They're both equal to Lucifer. These are all gods that are pagan, are occultic, and they're even praying directly to Lucifer without saying Lucifer. Lightbringer and the Lord of Light are Lucifer. So this program is really, it's after your soul. It's taking biblical things, twisting them, and adding extreme darkness. The gods in Game of Thrones point to Satan, but the show overall is pointing to Satan. There are many pagan religious acts in Game of Thrones. Daenerys performs a witchcraft ritual to help heal her husband from death. But as she does this, she aborts her unborn child. The Lord of Light cult followers burn human blood for far-seeing. As they look into fire, the Lord of Light allows them to see the future and prophesy. In one episode, the king's daughter is sacrificed, she's burned, to the Lord of Light to gain his favor in an important battle. Satanism encourages and promotes murder, cannibalism, sexual torture, incest, bestiality, occult practices, and magic. These are the exact things that we're seeing in Game of Thrones. And as Christians, we are forbidden, absolutely forbidden from these practices and involvement in such. There is an agenda threaded in this series to mock God, promote every form of sexual immorality and debauchery possible, and to glorify, teach, and promote Satanism, witchcraft, the occult, and Luciferianism. And it's packaged in such a way to make these dark practices look alluring. And many people are being evangelized into the demonic without even knowing it, with medieval fantasy, knights and swords, magic, dragon, suspense, handsome actors and beautiful actresses. The enemy is inviting the viewer to partake in the trap. I want to talk a little bit about Anton LaVey. He was the founder of the Church of Satan and dubbed the evilest man in the world. And I just want to read a couple of quotes from him. The TV set is the satanic family altar. Television is the major mainstream infiltration for the new satanic religion. It should be brought out that we not only condone, but encourage all types of what would be called sexual perversity and deviations because we feel that in a few short years, it will be established that everyone is a sexual deviant and pervert. LaVey died in 1997. Over 20 years have passed. And have we allowed this to happen? Have we as a society fallen for this trap? Have Christians jumped on the bandwagon? As Christians, we cannot be part of this. As humans, we cannot be part of this. We can't, as a people, be engaging in this sort of media and entertainment. Game of Thrones is one program of many that is promoting these agendas. We need to consider what we are watching and measure it against the Bible, to measure it against truth. Many Christians today think that because of the generation in which we live and with societal changes and advancements in media, that we are given more leeway to succumb to the culture and there is more room to be unholy and impure because everyone else is. And so the saying goes, but truly only dead fish go with the current. And as Christians, we are called to swim against this current and against the direction the prevailing masses are heading. And going against the current, of course, isn't easy, but it's the right thing to do, and it's what God is calling us to. We can be encouraged to know that righteous men have always lived in a very sinful world. The Bible gives us many examples of how godly men and women stood up against the unfaithfulness in their generations, giving inspiration to us even today. They chose Jesus in nonconformity against totally depraved societies. Think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. While everyone in Babylon was bowing their knee to Nebuchadnezzar, these three men refused to worship any other god than the Lord, despite being thrown into a fiery furnace. Noah, he walked with God and was found righteous and blameless during a time where great perversion was commonplace. We are told that when Jesus returns, it again will be like the days of Noah. Let us be as ones counted as going into the ark, following Noah's example of righteousness amongst a society immersed in corruption. There's so many examples in the Bible. We can look at David and Daniel, Job, John the Baptist, Rahab, Esther. It just can go on and on and on forever. But we can let these men and women be our role models and encourage us to walk against the tide, against the grain, and seek to serve God in holiness as He calls to. Let's be His friend and found righteous, and at the end of the day aspire to be told, "Well done, good and faithful servant," as we hear in Matthew 25. And I pray we would each ask God for grace to walk in such a way that we would hear Him say these words to us when it's all been said and done. Now I would like to read a few quotes from the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Founded in 1962, the NOCSE is the leading national organization addressing the public health crisis of pornography and exposing the links between all forms of sexual exploitation. They denounced HBO's most popular series, Game of Thrones, pointing to its depictions of sexual violence as a way of turning this violence into mainstream entertainment as part of their Shame of Thrones campaign. The NCOSE has condemned the series in the past, placing HBO on its 2016 and 2017 Dirty Dozen list, in which they label the most egregious organizations that contribute to sexual exploitation each year, and pointing to Game of Thrones as one of the network's biggest offenders. HBO's Game of Thrones is brimming with pornographic sex scenes, awash in misogynistic dialogue, and bloated with depictions of sexual violence and torture so savage as to be unrivaled in television history. In Game of Thrones, HBO has given a stage to an amalgam of pornography, rape, prostitution, child abuse, sexual violence, sexual paraphilias, and wholesale carnage that succeeds in bringing the ambiance of torture pornography to the American living room. Sexual violence is not a topic for HBO and Game of Thrones to exploit for mere shock value, nor is its unremitting theme in the show an issue that HBO can whitewash with claims of artistic license or historical conformity. Sexual violence is a real social harm with real, not fictional, victims who bear the scars of their abuse for their entire lives. By the excessiveness to which sexual violence is an element of the Game of Thrones plot, the graphic depictions of incestuous sex, rape, prostitution, child sexual abuse, and sexual torture, and dialogue which portrays abuses like incest as simply a matter of love or taste, Game of Thrones normalizes heinous sexual abuses and exploitation. I want to close with 2 short video clips where pastors discuss the Game of Thrones. I'm not affiliated with either of them in any way, nor am I endorsing them. Not many people have spoken on the topic of Game of Thrones, but these men have, and I really appreciate what they have to say. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
One more time with feelings, and I suspect a little bit of antipathy. This is Wretched Radio. You might recall a couple of weeks ago, the Christian internet world exploded when Pastor Kevin DeYoung, Mr. Young, Restless and Reformed, although really, Kevin, middle-aged, restless and reformed, wrote an article flummoxed. Why are Christians watching a TV show like Game of Thrones? He said, I just don't understand it. Kaboom! He got an earful. Actually, he got a lot of ears full. Many people responding. Kevin DeYoung deciding, tell you what, I'm going to summarize all of the arguments that I heard why Christians should feel free to watch the sex-filled Game of Thrones and respond to each of those broad categories. And I do believe this is well worth our time for 2 groups of people, which basically encompasses everybody. If this is a show that you are inclined to watch and you have used one of these excuses, let's let Kevin DeYoung respond to your justification for setting your eyes on nudity and sex. When phrased like that, it sure doesn't seem like you got a strong case. Nevertheless, if you're in the second group of people, you don't watch the Game of Thrones, and you'd like to help people understand this is not something for God's people. This is just not the way that we should be behaving. We should not be consuming things like this. There is no justification. You'll hear the arguments, and you'll be able to respond. Here we go. One of the big categories, you haven't even seen the show. Therefore, you can't judge. Well, that's true, writes Kevin DeYoung. But nobody's refuting, nobody's denying that Game of Thrones is filled with graphic sex. So the facts really aren't in dispute. So to simply cast this off and say, well, you haven't even seen this show, isn't an argument. The critique stands. Number 2, don't like it? Then don't watch it. We've heard that one, and now try to imagine if that's your justification for watching Game of Thrones. You catch your son watching pornography, and he says, Dad, if you don't like it, don't watch it. And number 3, pretty much the end of that one. The Bible is full of sex and violence. Now, I have also heard this argument, people trying to defend watching and playing video games that have a lot of violence. Hey, it's graphics, but it's not actual. After all, the Bible has a lot of violence. Here's the difference. The Bible never expresses or reveals intimacy issues in a titillating manner. It is done to show the beauty of it. Consider Song of Solomon, but how the language is poetic. It's not intended to be arousing. It's intended to be a beautiful picture of a beautiful act. It knows the line. When it also shows, when there's other more graphic descriptions of sex, first of all, it's nothing like Game of Thrones, so the comparison, I think, hobbles. But it's to show when you do that act outside of the bounds of marriage, it's a bad thing. It never glamorizes infidelity or adultery. It's a shameful thing. Game of Thrones is nothing but, and it's a glamorizing of it. It makes it look great. It's not the way the Bible portrays it. And when it comes to violence, to the people who have responded to me saying, hey, you just, the violence on the games that we play, the video games that we play, it's just boys having an outlet, or it's men being men. Oh, wait a second. Have we forgotten what war is? Do we know what it means to kill somebody? Look, there are times when it can be justified, when there can be a just war, a subject I hope to tackle later. But it's not something that's like, woo, I really blew the guy's brains out, real bloody. And that's what video games tend to be. And it trivializes human life and turns it into a sport. No, it is a serious, earnest issue. And so to say that the Bible is full of sex and violence doesn't cut it. Number 4, sex scenes and nudity don't faze me. Kevin DeYoung's response is, it should. Why doesn't it? Something could be wrong with your conscience. And look, I think there's a problem with a lot of our consciences. Even as we were talking about the video game debate last week, the amount of entertainment, the venues that we go into and think nothing of. Now, I'm not saying they were right or wrong, but if you recall, the Puritans would say going to the theater was an abomination. Imagine what they'd say about cable TV. Imagine what they'd say about Game of Thrones. They'd be shocked. Even Christians, I think, from the 1900s would be, whoa, what? And you justify that? Your conscience should trouble you if you are watching sex scenes. Number 6, stop judging and shaming. I see. I'll just read Kevin DeYoung's response. Judgmentalism is a spirit of censorious nitpicking. Making moral evaluations is what Christians do all the time. Sort of like arguing that a television show is not appropriate or that a blog post is judgmental. Like only a pastor with a sharp quill could write. Number 7, to those defending Game of Thrones, they would argue, I close my eyes during the bad parts. Well, better than nothing. Maybe an option that would be better altogether would be one of the video boxes that just cuts out those sex scenes. That would be better, but then, of course, you'd be watching about 3 minutes of Game of Thrones every week. Number 8, most shows have good and bad elements. The story and artistry outweigh these bad scenes. But don't those scenes that are that sinful make it unwatchable and not worth it? Sort of like picking up Playboy for the articles, thumbing through Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition just to enjoy the pictures of the pretty beaches. Number 9, I watch the show to engage my coworkers with the gospel. Kevin DeYoung responds, maybe you could evangelize better by explaining why watching Game of Thrones is sinful. Number 10, don't we have more important things to worry about? I love that one. Really scraping the bottom of the barrel on that subject, aren't we? Sorry, having a flashback. Kevin DeYoung says there's always 1,000 more important issues that we could be addressing, but then again, there are also 1,000 more important things we could be doing rather than watching graphic sex scenes on television. Schlam. The problem with these rebuttals is that they make an assumption, namely, it is okay to watch sensual entertainment, as if it's somehow a gray area. It's a middle thing. It isn't. And so Kevin DeYoung summarizes, from Adam and Eve scrambling for fig leaves, to the dishonorable nakedness of Noah, to the embarrassingly exposed buttocks of David's men. Certain aspects of our bodily selves are meant to be hidden. That's what Paul is presuming when he speaks of our unpresentable parts, treated with greater modesty. 1 Corinthians 12:23, Rexella. There's a reason that they're called, private parts. Outside of marriage, we aren't meant to show them. And we aren't meant to see them either. Does anyone think the Apostle Paul, or Jesus for that matter, would have been cool with the sensuality of Game of Thrones? I know it's been used a bit tritely. Next time you turn on Game of Thrones, invite Jesus to come and sit on the couch with you. You've got to watch this. The artistry is incredible. It's a great storyline. The color and the music, it's really great. You got to watch this, Savior, pure one, holy one. You're going to love this. Just close your eyes during the bad scenes, even though you have to open them up to see when the bad scenes are done, and you're usually not going to judge it right. Just go ahead, Jesus. Hard to imagine, isn't it? Take the medium of television out of it. Would you go and watch this? Let's just say the actors and actresses, although I think they're all actors now because there's no difference between boys and girls, that they were doing these acts on the street, somewhere on a park bench someplace. You're going to go to the park to watch it with the kids by yourself? Oh, no, kids, this isn't for you. Only your mature father and mother can watch this act. You wouldn't go. Why? Because you're not supposed to be watching it. What does TV have to do with it? Nothing. It doesn't matter that it's pixelated or actual. We don't watch those things. Kevin DeYoung pastorally writes, take a month to pray. Detox of anything sensually explicit or provocative, because you may see with new eyes something that you are too comfortable watching right now. You may start to feel a nagging conviction. I got myself some sin issues I wasn't aware with, and come to grips with the casual approach to sexual sin. Kevin DeYoung, we're so awash in sensuality that many Christians have no idea how compromised they've become. And I might suggest that could be you regarding video games and violence. I trust you're not watching the sexual ones, but what about the violent ones? Is it possible that you too are desensitized in that area? We're talking about the taking of human life. Some game, just shoot him down. I got to get to that wall. Shoot him down. I got to get to that helicopter. Shoot him down. I got to take that village. What? Are you desensitized? Only in a hypersexual, pornographic, saturated culture like ours could we think graphic sex scenes are no big deal. Kevin DeYoung, hopefully one last time. This is Wretched Radio.
Thanks for listening.
Emily in Eagan, Minnesota writes in, Pastor John, do you believe there's a difference between film nudity versus pornography? I know many Christians who are against porn, but they have no issue watching movies or TV shows that show graphic nudity. And very specifically, Adam writes in to ask this: what would you say to a Christian who watches the cable TV show Game of Thrones? This is a television series rated TV MA and has become rather infamous for its explicit nudity and sex scenes and for graphic scenes of rape and sexual violence against women. Pastor John, what do you say?
Tony, the closer I get to death and meeting Jesus personally, face to face, and giving an account for my life and for the careless words that I've spoken, Matthew 12:36, and how much more for intentional stares, the more sure I am of my resolve never intentionally to look at a TV show or a movie or a website or a magazine where I know I will see photos or films of nudity. Never. That's my resolve. And the closer I get to death, the better I feel about that and the more committed I become. And I want to invite, frankly, all Christians to join me in this pursuit of greater purity of heart and mind. In our day, when entertainment media is virtually the lingua franca of the world, this is an invitation to be an alien. And I believe with all my heart that what the world needs is radically bold, sacrificially loving, God-besotted freaks, aliens. In other words, I am inviting you to say no to the world for the sake of the world. The world does not need more cool, hip, culturally savvy, irrelevant copies of itself. That's a hoax that thousands of young Christians have been duped by. They've got to be hip, cool, savvy, culturally aware, watching everything in order not to be freakish. And that is undoing them morally and, I think, for their witness. So here are my reasons. I've got 12. So it's going to take a few minutes. But I need these if nobody else does, and I think others do too. Here are my reasons for why I'm committed to this kind of radical abstention from anything I know is going to present me with nudity. Jesus died to purify me. He died to purify his people. It is an absolute travesty of the cross to treat it as though Jesus died only to forgive us for the sin of watching nudity and not to purify us for the power not to watch it. He has blood-bought power in his cross. He died to make us pure. Titus 2:14, he gave himself for us to redeem us from all lawlessness and to purify for himself a people for his own possession. If we choose to endorse or embrace or enjoy or pursue impurity, we take a spear and ram it into Jesus' side every time we do. He suffered to set us free from impurity. Number 2, there is in the Bible from beginning to end a radical call for holiness of mind and heart and life. He who called you is holy. You be holy in all your conduct. 1 Peter 1:15. Or 2 Corinthians 7:1. Since we have these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from every defilement of body and spirit, bringing holiness to completion in the fear of the Lord. Nudity in movies and photos is not holy and does not advance our holiness. It is unholy and impure. Number 3. Jesus said, everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. Seeing naked women causes men and women seeing naked men, to sin with their minds and their desires, and often with their bodies. If Jesus told us to guard our hearts by gouging out our eyes to prevent lust, how much more would he say, don't watch it? Number 4, life in Christ is not mainly the avoidance of evil, but mainly the passionate pursuit of good. Philippians 4, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, whatever is excellent, if there's anything worthy of praise, if there's anything commendable, think on these things. My father used to say, be so busy doing you don't have time to don't. When people accuse us fundamentalists of being people with a bunch of don'ts. I've never felt that way. My life is not a constrained life. It is a free life. You were called to freedom, brothers, Galatians 5:13. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. Number 5, I want to see and know God as fully as possible in this life and the next. Watching nudity is a huge hindrance to that pursuit. Blessed are the pure in heart, they shall see God. The defilement of the mind and heart by watching nudity dulls the heart's ability to see and enjoy God. I dare anyone to watch nudity and turn straight to God and give Him thanks and enjoy Him more because of what you just experienced. Number 6, God calls women to adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control. 1 Timothy 2:9. When we pursue or receive or embrace nudity in our entertainment, we are implicitly endorsing the sin of the women who sell themselves to this way and are therefore uncaring about their souls. They are disobeying 1 Timothy 2:9, and we are saying that's okay. Number 7, most Christians are hypocrites in watching nudity because, on the one hand, they say by their watching that this is okay, and on the other hand, they know deep down they would not want their daughter or their wife to be playing this role. That's hypocrisy. Number 8, nudity is not like murder and violence on the screen. That's make-believe. Nobody really gets killed. But nudity is not make-believe. These actresses are really naked in front of the camera, doing exactly what the director says to do with their legs and their hands and their breasts. They're standing there, and they're naked in front of millions of people for the world to see. Number 9, sexual relations is a beautiful thing. God created it and pronounced it good, but it is not, as David Hubbard said when I was in seminary, it is not a spectator sport. It is a holy joy that is sacred in its secure place of tender love. Men and women who want to be watched, mark that word want, men and women who want to be watched in their nudity are in the category with exhibitionists who pull down their pants at the top of escalators. Number 10. There is no great film that needs nudity to add to its greatness. No, there isn't. There are creative ways to be true to reality without turning sex into a spectator sport and without putting actors and actresses in morally compromised situations on the set. It is not great artistic integrity that is driving this. Underneath all of it is male sexual appetite driving this business, and following from that is peer pressure in the industry and the desire for ratings that sell. It's not art that puts nudity in. It's the appeal of prurience. It sells. Number 11. Christians do not watch nudity with a view to maximizing holiness. That's not what keeps them coming back to the shows. They know deep down that these TV shows or these movies are shot through with the commendation and exaltation of attitudes and actions that are utterly out of step with the death to self and with exaltation of Christ. No, what keeps those Christians coming back is the fear that if they took Christ at his word and made holiness as serious as I'm saying it is, they would have to stop seeing so many TV shows and so many movies. They would be viewed as freakish. And that today is the worst evil of all. To be seen as freakish is a much greater evil than to be unholy. Last one. There is one biblical guideline that makes life very simple. Romans 14:23. Whoever has doubts is condemned if he eats, because the eating is not from faith. Whatever does not proceed from faith is sin. My paraphrase, if you doubt, don't. That would alter the viewing habits of millions, and oh, how sweetly they would sleep with their conscience. So I say it again. Join me in the pursuit of the kind of purity that sees God and knows the fullness of joy in his presence and the everlasting pleasure at his right hand.
There's a lot to think about here. Thank you, Pastor John. This episode reminds me of another one we recorded a while back. A wife wrote in and asked, is my husband obligated to give up movies with sex scenes or nudity in it if I don't like it because I'm jealous? And Pastor John responded in episode number 149, and you can find it in the podcast archive. Again, that was episode number 149. We'll be back on Monday with a new episode. Until then, be sure to check out the Ask Pastor John app for the iPhone and the Android, and check out our website, desiringgod.org, where you can find an archive of thousands of books, articles, sermons, and other resources, all free of charge from John Piper, and all intended to help explain why God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. I'm your host, Tony Reinke. We'll see you next week.